What's going on, gang? We're back at it with another NFL Prize Picks prop video for you for NFL Week 4. This will be covering all of the Sunday games, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and even the Sunday night football game. We'll have a couple of props that I like, and we'll talk about those in this video as well. So if this is your first time here, welcome. If you're returning, well, it's good to see you again. Definitely make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure that notifications are turned on. You can do that by clicking the little bell below and drop a like on this video. We've been crushing the likes. I appreciate all the support that you give. We're going to go for at least 45 likes on this video. I'm taking the over. I think with your help, we can cover that prop of 45 likes. Now, if you don't play on PrizePicks yet, it's a fantastic time to sign up because they're doing a 100% instant deposit match on your first deposit up to $100. So if you put in 20, they're doubling you up, giving you $40. If you put in 50, they're doubling that up, giving you $100. And if you want to max it out and take full advantage of this offer, I recommend putting in $100. They'll give you $200 to get you started on your NFL player prop bets over on PrizePicks. So if you don't play yet, go to prizepicks.com, use promo code Curry, just like you see below on this little banner here. Promo code Curry, C-U-R-R-Y, will get you double your money on your first deposit. Now, another thing that I'm doing as an exclusive to you, if you do use my promo code on PrizePicks and you want to join a community, because let's face it, this is tough. This PrizePicks, this player prop world is tough to go at alone. If you're looking for a community of like-minded individuals who play all the different sports on PrizePicks, whether it be NFL, CSGO, WNBA, NBA, which is right around the corner, and so much more. We're doing it all in our Discord group. All you have to do is just join through Patreon. It's $20. I'm going to make sure that you get your first month of Patreon for free. If you use my promo code on PrizePicks, Curry, if you sign up on Patreon, I'll give you your first month of Patreon for free. You can get in there, mix it up with the rest of the community members, and hopefully we land on some winning picks for the month of October. All right, with that out of the way, I just wanted to let you know that all of my player prop research is fueled by the best predictive NFL model out there, and that's the Blitz by Derek Carty. I love this tool. It has everything that you could possibly want for player props and then some. It's got standard projections, injury reports, game level factors to help you build out game scripts, which is very, very helpful. Plus, it's got some other stuff in there for some of the other sites that are salary cap DFS based. So anything and everything you could possibly want as far as an NFL predictive model is right here by one of the best in the business, Derek Carty. So I definitely recommend checking out the Blitz. I'll leave a link down in the description below. And last but not least, props.cash is a fantastic way to elevate your props-based research. They don't pay me to talk about props.cash. I'm just a, let's say, loyalist to their product because they have a fantastic product, allowing you to research anything and everything you could possibly want to know about props. So definitely check out props.cash. I'll leave a link down in the description below. Links to everything will be down in the description below. I've got a little Linktree link. It's one link, gives you access to everything that I've mentioned in today's video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some of the player props that caught my eye with the NFL slate scheduled for tomorrow, Sunday. We're going to start things off with Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold's at 267.5 passing yards. According to my notes here, the Blitz by Derek Carty has him projected for at least 300 passing yards, which presents about an 11% edge to us, which is very, very good. Now, Sam Darnold has hit this prop in 3 out of his last 3 games. So to start the season, he's 3 for 3 at going over 267.5 passing yards, which is a 100% hit rate according to props.cash. And that brings his season average to about 296 passing yards per game. So you could see why I'm kind of bullish here on this Sam Darnold over 267.5. He's taking on the Dallas Cowboys at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's go over to a free tool that you can utilize, ProFootballReference.com. They've got a fantastic little offering of different stats and stuff like that. So we're going to take a look at defense versus quarterback stats per game. We're going to go ahead and click the yards here, and we're going to look at the Dallas Cowboys, who are giving up 347.7 passing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. Well, guess who's coming into town? It's Sam Darnold. And so I'm really, really liking the over here on this 267.5 passing yard prop for him. The other prop that caught my eye was Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders. They're taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, he was at 283.5 passing yards last night. They bumped him down to 280.5 passing yards, but according to the Blitz, he is projected to go for 305.9 passing yards. Let's call it 306 passing yards. That's about a 7.6 or more percent edge to us. I'm liking that. He's also hit this prop 3 out of 3 times. That's a 100% hit rate according to props.cash. And he's averaging over 400 passing yards per game through the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. So against the Chargers here, let's go take a look and see how many passing yards per game the Chargers are giving up to opposing quarterbacks. They're a pretty tough defense, giving up just 210.7 passing yards per game. So while he is projected to throw for a boatload of yards, and while he has thrown for a boatload of yards throughout the course of the regular season so far, this one could be more difficult than it appears at first glance. As always, I do recommend doing some additional research on any props that you get from me or anybody else out there for that matter. So it definitely pays to spend a little bit extra time in doing your research. But that's it for the passing yard props that kind of caught my eye here. Let's move over to the next category. We're going to talk about rushing props. And for that, the first one that jumped out to me was Mark Ingram, who's at 32.5 rushing yards. I've got him projected at 45.3 according to the Blitz, which presents to us a pretty significant edge, over 30% edge in our favor. Now, not to mention, he's also covered this prop in 2 out of his first 3 games to start the season, 66% cover rate, or 67% if you want to round up. And he's averaging about 49 rushing yards per game. So the key here for Houston is going to be that they keep this game close against Buffalo, which could be difficult. It could be difficult. Not to mention, Buffalo is kind of a tough defense here against the run. Let's go take a look at Pro Football Reference. We'll scroll down here, we'll click the yards column, and we'll go find the Buffalo Bills, and you could see how many rushing yards they allow per game to opposing running backs. They are down toward the bottom here. They're allowing just 54 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. So this could be tough sledding here for Mark Ingram. But if Houston can kind of keep it close and competitive for long enough to get him enough touches, then he could definitely go over this prop. As I mentioned, he has done so in 2 out of his last 3 games. So there you go. Mark Ingram over 32.5 rushing yards. The next one that caught my eye was Damian Harris of the New England Patriots. Now, last night he was down a little lower than he is right now. I think he was at 39.5 rushing yards. They bumped him up to 41.5 rushing yards against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who we know has a stout defense. This game takes place Sunday night. Of course, it's the return of Tom Brady to New England, but this is about Damian Harris. So he's at 41.5 rushing yards. I've got him projected on the Blitz for 64 plus rushing yards. That's a pretty big edge, almost 50% edge in our advantage. On top of that, he has hit this prop in 2 out of his first 3 games. That's a 66% hit rate with an average of 58.6 rushing yards per game for Damian Harris. So enough of a cushion here for him to definitely hit this prop. So let's go ahead and go over to the running back category here. We'll find the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and we'll see how well they've done against the run so far. And they're 1 notch above the Buffalo Bills here, allowing 57.3 rushing yards per game. So while this prop is pretty enticing, is pretty juicy looking according to the projections, according to the hit rate, according to the averages that Damian Harris holds, this is not going to be an easy matchup here against this Buccaneers defense, especially if the Bucs find a way to put some points up early in this game. They might have to abandon the run, them being the New England Patriots. But James White's out, so maybe more touches go Damian Harris's way, and that's why that one caught my eye. The next one I want to talk about and the final rushing yards prop is going to be none other than a quarterback, and we're talking about Daniel Jones, who might be, maybe behind Lamar Jackson, the best rushing quarterback to start this season. Jalen Hurts, you could probably throw him in there too, but Daniel Jones has been pretty darn good at running the ball, and I think a lot of that has to do with Saquon Barkley's health He's been a little slow to start the season, but Daniel Jones is going to be without a couple of his key wide receivers here. I think this is going to be another situation where he's going to have to put on his little Superman cape and do the best that he can and try to put the team on his back. So 26.5 rushing yards seems a little bit low. I've got him projected for over 32 rushing yards according to the Blitz. It's about a 19% edge in our advantage. Now, what really caught my eye is the fact that he's covered this prop in 3 out of his last 3 games. That's a 100% hit rate, averaging over 53 rushing yards per game. So 53 versus this 26.5 looks pretty enticing to me. So let's move things over here to the New Orleans Saints defense. We're going to take a look and see how many rushing yards per game that they give up to opposing quarterbacks. We could do that by going to the rushing category, clicking the yards column, and we'll find the New Orleans Saints here. And they are toward the bottom. They're pretty stingy against opposing quarterbacks and allowing rushing yards, allowing just 11.7 rushing yards per game. I have a feeling they're going to be allowing a few more this week against Daniel Jones, as he is a pretty capable scrambler. So that's one to definitely research a bit more. But so far, the over's looking like the way to go on this prop. So now that we've wrapped up all of the rushing yard props, there's a handful of receiving yard props that really caught my eye. So we're going to head over to that category on PrizePicks. Back to the top we go. Click receiving yards, and we'll start things off with Quintez Cephas, or Cephas, however you want to pronounce it, but he's at 34.5 receiving yards. I've got him projected to go under that number at around 33 receiving yards. That's just a hit rate of 1 out of 3. He hasn't covered this prop a whole lot this season, had one big game, has been pretty quiet, pretty much invisible for the other 2 games. And he's averaging about 27.6 receiving yards per game. So he's going to be taking on the Chicago Bears at 1 p.m. We know they're a tough defense. Let's go take a look and see how tough they've been against opposing wide receivers. So we head back over to Pro Football Reference. We click the yards category, and it shows you how many yards that they give up to opposing wide receivers. So the Chicago Bears, typically pretty tough defense, but in this case, they're giving up almost 188 receiving yards per game to opposing wide receivers. But let's be honest, this group of receivers for the Detroit Lions doesn't really pose any threats to most defenses out there. And we know that Mr. Cephas here is not one that should be feared based on his first 3 outings. So while they do give up a pretty high number of receiving yards per game to opposing wide receivers, I'm not all too worried here. I'd be leaning toward the under on Cephas. One other one that caught my eye was DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers. Now, DJ Moore has been a guy who has just come out of the gates this season. He's had good seasons in the past, but I think this one's going to be more of a breakout season. So let's go down the board and find DJ Moore. Now, PrizePicks has him at 76.5 receiving yards. That seems entirely too low. He's projected on the Blitz for over 91 receiving yards. That's about a 20% edge in our favor. I love 20% edges. Not to mention, he's hit this prop of 76.5 receiving yards. In other words, he's covered this prop in 3 out of the first 3 games to start the season. That's a 100% hit rate. Now, on top of that, he's averaging 95 receiving yards per game, so there's plenty of cushion here for him to go over the 76.5 receiving yard number. Now, he's facing the Cowboys. I mentioned before that I liked Sam Darnold to go over his passing yards prop, so it makes sense that his number 1 target, DJ Moore, I would be liking him to go over his receiving yards prop. So let's head back over to Pro Football Reference. We will look for the Dallas Cowboys here, and they are allowing over 208 yards per game to opposing wide receivers, so you can see why I'm so high on DJ Moore in this particular matchup. So with DJ Moore out of the way, let's move over to another wide receiver who might be arguably the hottest wide receiver in the NFL right now, and I'm talking about Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams. Let's scroll down the list here and find Mr. Kupp. He is at 83.5 receiving yards facing the Arizona Cardinals. Now, last night he was at 85.5. They've actually bumped him down, which is kind of astonishing, kind of amazing if you ask me. I've got him projected for a little over 85 receiving yards, so a slight edge in our favor, but he's covered this prop in his first 3 games, and he's averaging a whopping 122 receiving yards per game. He is by far the favorite target of quarterback Matthew Stafford here. And I expect that against the Arizona Cardinals that this game could be high scoring, that these teams will look to put up as many points as they possibly can. So Cooper Kupp at over 83.5 receiving yards makes a lot of sense. Let's head over to Pro Football Reference. We'll find the Arizona Cardinals here and see just how well they've been doing defending against opposing wide receivers. And they're not bad. They're kind of like middle of the pack, an average team at defending opposing wide receivers, allowing 168 receiving yards per game to opposing wideouts. But I don't think anybody can stop Cooper Kupp at this point. I haven't seen it through 3 games, and I expect him to have another strong game here. So I like Cooper Kupp over 83.5 receiving yards. I also like Cooper Kupp's receptions. I think they had him up at 7 last night. He's down to 6.5 today. Got him projected for over 7 receptions. He's hit this in 3 out of 3 games, and he's averaging about 8.3 receptions per game according to my notes here. So Cooper Kupp's receiving yards or his receptions, both looking like pretty strong ways to go. Now on the flip side of that game, we've got Christian Kirk, who has actually been low-key quiet, on fire here to start the season. Now when I say on fire, I mean in terms of covering his prop of 43.5 receiving yards. Yes, they have a lot of options, one being DeAndre Hopkins, but he's a little beat up with a rib injury. They've also got A.J. Green. He's kind of over the hill at this point. And they've got the exciting rookie Rondale Moore. But Christian Kirk has been quietly getting it done at 43.5 receiving yards. I've got him going over, barely over, at just 44 receiving yards according to the Blitz. But he has covered this prop in 3 out of his first 3 games. So that's a 100% cover rate. And he's averaging nearly 80 receiving yards per game, folks, which is a huge number compared to this 43.5 that he's projected at. So let's head back over to Pro Football Reference. We will find the Los Angeles Rams, and you can see that they are one of the top 10 worst teams, we'll call it, at 183.3 receiving yards per game to opposing wide receivers. So if DeAndre Hopkins isn't 100%, he might be out there as more of a decoy, and they may end up feeding Christian Kirk more footballs. You never know. So that's something to keep an eye on. He has hit this prop in every single game to start this season. So you could see why I'm big on it. Now, one of the more controversial plays, we'll call it, is Stefan Diggs, who is at 83.5 receiving yards. But listen, guys, he hasn't hit this prop once yet to start this season. So I'm actually thinking about taking the under on Stefan Diggs at 83.5 receiving yards. Let's get into it a little bit. I've got him projected to go for about 75 receiving yards, which gives us about a 10% edge in our favor. He has not hit this prop once yet to start the season. Now, can he? Of course he can. He's one of the best wide receivers in the league and one of the most potent offenses in the league. But this doesn't look like last year's Buffalo Bills team. Of course, they've added Emmanuel Sanders. They've got Cole Beasley in the mix. We can't forget about Gabriel Davis. So they've got a number of different weapons that they can spread the ball around to. So maybe those passes just aren't funneling Stefan Diggs' way like they were last year. At any rate, he is 0 for 3 at covering 83.5 receiving yards, and he's averaging 63.6 receiving yards per game, which is about 20 yards lower than where he's expected to be at on Sunday at 83.5. So let's go over to Houston's defense, and we're going to take a look and see how well they've defended against the pass this season. And to no surprise, they're toward the bottom of the league in terms of receiving yards per game, allowing about 158.7. So they're not one of the worst, but they're also not one of the best. So, kind of middle of the pack. They're decent against opposing wide receivers. So this could be another game where Stefan Diggs is kind of quiet here. So that's one to definitely research a little bit further. But as I mentioned, I've got him projected to go under, and the numbers aren't looking good. He has not hit this prop yet. So let's go ahead and head over to receptions. I already mentioned Cooper Kupp earlier. He's looking like a good way to go. Another couple that caught my eye was Bryan Edwards of the Las Vegas Raiders, who's at 2.5 receptions. I've got him projected for slightly more than that at 2.6. And he's covered this prop in 3 out of 3. That's a 100% hit rate, averaging about 3.3 receptions per game to start this season. So he's going to be facing the Los Angeles Chargers. We can go back over here to Pro Football Reference. We can find the Chargers, who are at the bottom of the list here, but we're not going to look at yards. We're looking at receptions, and they allow about 11 receptions per game to opposing wide receivers. So take that for what you will. You figure that Edwards is one of the top pass catchers. You got to factor in, obviously, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow. Those guys probably make up the top 3 receivers for the Las Vegas Raiders. So somebody's got to catch some footballs in this one. Why not take a shot at Bryan Edwards over 2.5 receptions? Now, there's a running back that caught my eye for the receptions category, and I'm talking about David Montgomery, who they had at 3 receptions, and that seemed a little bit too rich for my blood based on how well he's performed to start this season. They've still got him at 3. He's facing the Detroit Lions. We know they're not a very good defense, but David Montgomery at 3 receptions, I got him projected closer to 2 receptions at 2.3. That presents about a 25% edge in our favor. He's covered this in just 1 out of 3 games. And that's just a 33% hit rate, averaging about 2 receptions per game. So let's go and see how the Detroit Lions do against opposing running backs. We'll click the receptions category here. We'll unhighlight the Tampa Bay Bucks, and we'll go find the Detroit Lions. And they are down toward the bottom. They allow approximately 3 receptions per game to opposing running backs. So that would mean that David Montgomery has to catch every single reception of the receptions made by running backs in order for him to hit this prop. Seems a little difficult to do. I mean, they've got other running backs on the team. Could David Montgomery do it? Sure. I mean, anybody could catch 3 balls in any given game. But as somebody who's played some running back props recently and not had much success, I would be leaning toward the under on this one. And at the very worst, I think this pushes. So I'm taking the under on David Montgomery. Worst case scenario, it pushes. I don't think he catches 4 balls in this one, though. So with the receptions out of the way, let's round things out here with a passing touchdown prop that caught my eye, and it's Kyler Murray against the Rams. 1.5 passing touchdown seems a tad bit too low for a guy like Kyler Murray, who has, tremendous upside, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I don't need to say much more on him. So he's at 1.5 on PrizePicks. I've got him projected for about 1.9, putting him very, very close to at least 2 passing touchdowns. That's about a 25% edge in our favor. He has covered this prop in 2 out of the first 3 games to start the season. 66% hit rate, averaging over 2 passing touchdowns per game so far to start the season. 2.3 passing touchdowns. So let's go take a look at the Rams, see how many passing touchdowns they have given up to opposing quarterbacks in the first 3 games to start the season here. Go all the way down to the bottom, and you could see that they have allowed just 0.67 passing touchdowns per game to opposing quarterbacks. Of course, they faced Tom Brady. That was probably their stiffest challenge. They're going to have another stiff challenge here with Kyler Murray. So while they do look stingy against passing touchdowns for opposing quarterbacks, I do think Kyler Murray has the talent to overcome this little ugly statistic of 0.67 passing touchdowns allowed to opposing quarterbacks. So I am leaning toward the over here on Kyler Murray's passing touchdowns. And to round things off and to sum up this video, we're going to the pass completions category. I mentioned liking the Raiders passing game. Derek Carr was a guy that I talked about earlier in terms of liking his passing yards. Well, if he's going to hit the over on his passing yards, that means he's going to have to complete some passes. So his 24 pass completions, I think this was at 24.5 last night. They bumped it down slightly, but I've got him projected closer to 26 completed passes, which gives us about a 7.2 to 8% edge. He's hit this in 3 out of the first 3 games. He's averaging 29.3 pass completions per game to start the season. So let's go see how the Chargers have done so far at the pass completions category to start the season. So we'll unclick the Rams. Let's go find the Chargers. We'll hit completed passes here, and they're giving up a little over 21 completed passes per game. So you got to kind of game script this. Do you think the Chargers jump out to a big lead? and force the Raiders to throw a lot? Do you think this game stays close and we see a more balanced approach from the Raiders where they can keep the run game alive? Or do they just go pass happy, pass heavy like they have for the first 3 games to start this season? I have seen a little bit of a trend for Derek Carr and his passing completions. They've kind of trended downwards from week 1 to week 2 to week 3. So maybe they're trying to incorporate more run. But if the Chargers are putting pressure with their offense on the Raiders to keep up, then the Raiders are just going to have to throw the ball more. So the over on Derek Carr is looking like the way to go here. And last but not least, we're going to look at Baker Mayfield and his completed passes. I think they had him at 21.5, and they may have bumped him down to 21. I'm not sure, but this number did change ever so slightly. He's projected for about 19 completed passes according to the Blitz. It's about an 8 to 10% advantage for us. He's only covered this prop 1 out of 3 times to start this season, 33% hit rate, 19.6 completed passes per game to start the season. So big thing is going to be, can the Cleveland Browns play ahead? If they play with the lead or this game stays close, I expect more runs than passes for the Browns. But the Minnesota Vikings have had a pretty sneaky good offense. And if Dalvin Cook's out, it's going to rely on Kirk Cousins to put up a ton of points, and he has been. His right arm has been the #1 weapon, I think, so far for the Minnesota Vikings. He's been putting up some fantastic numbers. If you play fantasy football, you know that Kirk Cousins right now is a top 10 quarterback in fantasy football leagues. But let's go take a look at Minnesota real quick to wrap this video up. See how many completed passes per game that they're allowing to opposing quarterbacks. So we go down the line here looking for Minnesota. They give up about 24 completed passes per game to opposing quarterbacks. So maybe Baker Mayfield, the game script goes his way and he ends up going over 21 completed passes. But based on his averages, based on the projections, it's just not looking good here for Baker Mayfield. So definitely do a little bit more research, as you should, on all the props mentioned in this video. But that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully this video helps you out. Hopefully you land on some winning picks. If you don't like any of the picks that I mentioned in this video, I'm happy to take your submissions down in the comment section below. Leave your favorite prop. I'm sure it'll help me and everyone else who views these videos out. Thank you so much. If this video helped you out, make sure you drop a like, make sure you're subscribed, make sure notifications are turned on, and hit the link down in the description below if you're interested in the Blitz, if you're interested in props.cash, if you're interested in supporting my work through Patreon. It's all down there for you to do. Give it a look. We'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace out.